Abracadabra, an unpublished work by Bailey A. Osborne. Chapter 1. Earth. Earth is the third planet from the Sun and the only known planet to support life. Did you know there's a constellation called Phoenix? Abra seemed to be talking to no one as her eyes stared up at the stars. You can't see it here, only in the southern hemisphere. When no one answered her, she chuckled softly and turned around on the little wooden stool she had carried out with her into the big empty field. She flicked on her flashlight and shone it on a dark shape several yards away. The shape yelped and hurried to cover his eyes. Laughing again, Abra turned off her light and waited for her friend to join her. "How did you know I was here?" he asked. Through the darkness, Abra heard the sound of the boy standing to his feet. "Because I felt safe," said Abra, "and I figured Stellan would ask you to keep an eye on me since he doesn't have time to come out anymore." Abra turned on her flashlight again as Shepherd Lee made his way over to her. Keeping the beam low, Abra shone it on the ground so he could join her without tripping. Since the beginning of Abra's working memory, Shepherd had been there. A few months older, a few inches taller, a whole lot louder, and always ready to laugh. That was the Shepherd of her childhood. Recently he had turned 18, and soon she would too. Yet he seemed ready to be a man, and Abra still felt young. Perhaps the feeling of stunted growth came from lack of memory, Abra theorized. Most of her memories had been lost in her sickness. The handful of ones her mind had saved all had Shepherd in them as kids. Reading books together on the couch, barely able to sound out the words. Him running next to her when she rode her bike for the first time without training wheels. Tears running down their faces while they ate spicy fish cakes and laughed at each other's misery. Walking home from school while sharing a secret donut that he bought with his leftover lunch money. Unaware of the memory sifting through his friend's mind, Shepherd sat down on the damp grass at Abra's feet with a loud sigh. "Can you see the stars in Solu?" Abra asked, slipping from her stool to sit next to him in the grass. He glanced at her, startled, but he quickly gave her a smile when she grinned. "Not very well," Shepherd said with a shake of his head. "I still want to go there one day," said Abra resolutely. "Nah, you wouldn't like it." Shepherd nudged her with his shoulder. "It's better here." "You'd be just as curious as me if you'd never been there before." Abra nudged him right back. "One day I'll go. It is the capital, after all." Letting out a scoff, Shepherd knew better than to keep arguing. Abra had made up her mind. They sat in silence for a few minutes, Abra staring at the stars and Shepherd staring at nothing. They didn't play together anymore, but they still had the familial ease and comfort between them that Abra remembered. She blinked her eyes slowly, her mind echoing the names of the stars she had been looking at that night. Lyra, Cygnus, Aquila, Vega, Deneb. "Do you think I'll remember them this time?" she asked Shepherd, a hint of hope in her tone. "What?" Shepherd turned to look at her, as if he had forgotten she sat beside him. "Stars." A tiny lump formed in Abra's throat, and she blamed it on the way she had her head tilted back. The stars twinkled and shone, and the sight of it made Abra's heart squeeze. "Do you think I'll ever remember their names?" "I don't know." Shepherd didn't sound like his usual loud and confident self. "I wish you could." "Have I always loved them?" she asked quietly. "For as long as I've known you, at least," Shepherd answered. "Hmm." Abra didn't say anything else. Because in an otherwise happy existence, the only thing that made Abra Huang sad was that no matter how hard she tried, she could never seem to remember anything about stars. Every night she would stare up at the sky with a map of the heavens in her hands and think, "Remember, Abra, remember." For hours she would sit on her wooden stool and find the constellations. Over and over she would murmur their positions, calling them by name, knowing that she had done just the same the night before. "I'll remember this time for sure," she would think with unwarranted optimism as she lay her head down on her pillow. Orion, Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, Aquila, Vega, Sirius. But each morning the sun seemed to kiss the memories of her starry friends from her mind, as if they had never existed in all of eternity. Finally, Shepherd suggested they head home before it got too late. Carrying her stool for her, Shepherd walked beside her. When they said good night, Abra told him to come with her next time if he wanted. He said okay, then gave her a smile and walked away toward his own home. In the morning, Abra remembered her entire conversation with Shepherd, but not a single constellation that had been in the sky. Don't you think it's strange, Stellan? Abra asked her older brother over breakfast. I can memorize everything else in the world, but not the stars. Maybe your brain's already full. Stellan tapped his knuckle against her forehead and glanced down at her full bowl of porridge. Eat. I need you in the shop today. Stellan never wanted to talk about stars with Abra anymore. In the beginning, when her memory started working again, he used to lay out in the field with her. Together they would find the stars easily seen with the naked eye and say them to each other. In the morning, Stellan would remember everything, and Abra would only remember him. Slowly, he had stopped responding to her invitations, and Abra began to recognize the grief in his eyes. Out of love for him, she had stopped asking. Desperate to understand this gap in her memory, Abra memorized other things. Collecting notebooks, Abra penned down list after list of things she could remember. She memorized the names of flowers, trees, countries, oceans, endangered species, healing herbs. Ginseng, rosemary, ginger, echinacea, basil. Those things came to mind unbidden. Argentina, Brazil, Comoros, Cameroon, Denmark. But never the stars. She could never remember the stars. Weeks passed, then months, and nothing changed. It had been almost a full year since she had started trying to regain her knowledge of the sky. The stars refused to be remembered. I think it's because of the sickness, Abra told Shepard later with a frown on her face. And I think Stellan knows it too, but he won't tell me. I'm sorry, Abracadabra, he said, softening his apology with her childhood nickname. But her nickname did nothing to hide the grief from his face, and Abra turned away, feeling awkward that he seemed more sad about it than she did. Abra knew that Shepard also felt the grief like Stellan, but he showed it differently. He would sit closer, smile bigger, laugh louder, then sigh as soon as he thought she couldn't hear. Where Stellan pushed until Abra felt lonely and distant, locking himself away in his office and coming home late. Shepard pulled until she felt tucked under his wing like she belonged to a possessive mother hen. She had learned to endure it, though. It only ever lasted a couple days. Then the lines around his eyes would smooth and settle, and everything would go back to normal. Only Abra seemed to be immune from whatever virus caused her brother and friend to feel so much sadness. Even on the days where they seemed the most affected by the grief, she couldn't help but smile when she saw a friendly dog or happy baby. Whether it rained or snowed or the sun shone bright, she could find something good about the day. She would organize her treasures, running her fingers over the well-worn objects and wonder at their history. Who am I? She asked the shiny teapot and the ripped children's book. They had no answer for her, but when she looked at them, she could feel almost certain that they knew something. Later, she added a green sweater and a pair of blue football cleats to the bottom of her special treasure box. How did I get so sick? Asking Stellan questions about their past and her illness sometimes sent them into a heated quarrel that would last all day. Other times he would sit with her patiently and tell her how they had always been there in the tiny village of Yotoko, and that as long as she remembered her doses every 24 hours, she would be fine. You don't think I'll lose any more memories? She asked when the tiny worry that lived in the back of her mind came to the forefront. No, I promise. Stellan took her hand and gave it a squeeze. You trust me, right? Of course I do. Abra squeezed his hand back and gave him the most earnest gaze she had, because what would she do without the protection of her big brother? She shuddered at the thought. He had given up everything for her. Once upon a time they had had parents, and Stellan had had a life that didn't consist of raising his little sister. Abra didn't remember her father or mother, but she knew Stellan did. He had lived 7 years before she joined the family. No matter how hard or weary life seemed to be for him, he never complained, and not once did Abra hear him blame her for anything. One day I'll be grown, and Stellan will be able to live the life he wants, Abra wrote in her journal just days before her 18th birthday. It had been a full year since they managed to get her sickness under control and stop the hemorrhaging of memories. Little by little, Abra found her confidence in herself returning as she held on to the parts of her she hadn't lost. And I'll do everything I can to pay him back for all he's done for me. And so years passed, and Abra worked her memory, doing her best to be ready for the day when she would be on her own. Lilac, lily, gladiolus, peony, daffodil, primrose. Elk, wombat, cobra, sparrow. Rabat, Morocco, Amsterdam, Netherlands, Tokyo, Japan, Beijing, China. She learned how to make jams and herbal teas, how to write calligraphy, how to do glass blowing and Tai Chi. She would sit with the older women of the village and help them make noodles, learn their secret recipes, ask them how to cure illnesses and set broken bones. She would sit with the young mothers of the village and help them with their teething infants, learn how to bathe them, ask them about lullabies and ticklish spots. All those things filled her mind, body, and spirit until she felt full to bursting with the mysteries and secrets of a happy life. But at night she would look up at the stars and feel that prick of sadness. Why can't I remember you? She stared at the pinholed blanket of the night sky and felt a tear trickle down her cheek. She only cried when she stared at the stars. Why do I miss you when I don't know you? But then Abra found herself turning 23 the same way she had turned 22, 21, 20. How many birthdays had she spent with just her brother and her friend? Had she ever had a party that consisted of more than a chocolate cake that Shepard bought back from Solu, decorated with white frosting and pink letters? What had her mother and father sounded like when they sang happy birthday? Would she ever be old enough or capable enough in Stellan's eyes to move on with her life? She sat at the kitchen table, doing her best to smile as she received her gifts. Before unwrapping them, she knew what they would be. Stellan's gifts were always books and journals. He watched her with a sentimental look on his face that barely covered the grief. Over the years, he had gotten better at hiding it, but the grief always showed up on her birthday. Pretending not to notice, Abra found a book about Eastern philosophers and a journal with a picture of the night sky on the front. She smiled up at her brother to thank him. I love it, Stellan. Abra traced her fingers around the edge of the journal. Thank you. I'm just thankful for another year of good health, he said, his eyes damp with unshed tears. Another year of not losing any more memories. Blushing over Stellan's emotions, Abra ducked her head and pretended to read the table of contents to her new book. Once she thought Stellan had composed himself, she put the book down and picked up the gift from Shepard. His face lit up when she glanced at him with a curious grin. I hope you like it, he said, leaning forward in his chair to watch her. Tearing off the wrapping paper, a soft blue sweater appeared, and Abra gasped. Shepard beamed, proud of himself for giving her something she liked. Abra had known it would be clothes. All the girls in Solu are wearing sweaters like this right now, he explained as Abra held it up. I thought the blue would look good on you. That looks nice. Stellan reached over to touch the fabric. Oh, it's soft. Ah, thank you, Shepard. Abra held out a hand, and Shepard gripped it for a moment. I can't wait to wear this. Just as Stellan's gifts were always books, Shepard's were always some item of clothing that he had been told was the latest fashion in Solu. Of course, Abra could only take his word for it, as she had no way to confirm what he told her, but he seemed to know what she would like. Whether the clothes were in fashion or not, Abra wore them proudly. What's your birthday wish? Stellan asked. He watched his little sister closely, a small smile pulling up the corners of his mouth. Stare at stars? Actually, Abra chose her words carefully. Since I'm 23 now, and I've been doing really well, my wish is to go to Solu. From out of the corner of her eye, she could see Shepard and Stellan share a glance, but Stellan's smile didn't fade. He put a hand on the back of his sister's head and gave a little laugh. How are you already 23? He asked. I know that you don't think it's smart for me to go there because it might make me sick, but if I go with you guys, I'll be okay. Abra looked from Stellan to Shepard. It doesn't have to be a long trip, even just a day. I really, really want to see it. I'll consider it, said Stellan, letting his hand fall to Abra's shoulder before he pulled it back to his lap. He gave her a nod when she stared at him, doing her best to read his emotions. He seemed to know her plan, though, and kept his feelings out of sight behind his dark blue eyes. Staring back at her, Stellan let his smile cross his face again. What? I said I'll consider it. Don't you trust me? Well, of course I trust you. I just want to make sure you're serious. Abra felt a swoop of excitement in her stomach at the thought that maybe, at long last, she would finally be able to see the world beyond Yotoko like she wanted. Turning to Shepard, she saw him watching the siblings quietly. I could even go with Shepard when he goes next time. He's always going to Solu on the weekends. I don't think you would enjoy his weekend trips, said Stellan with a glance to the younger man. Shepard's face turned red, and he looked down at the table. Abra waited for her friend or brother to explain what that meant, but neither of them said a word. Feeling a little hurt about being excluded, she stood up, her gifts in her arms. The boys gave her their attention, watching her push in her chair. I'm going to put my gifts in my room, said Abra, hoping her face didn't look too bothered. Thank you for celebrating my birthday with me. A moment after disappearing into her room, Abra heard a tap on her door. She had been expecting it. She knew Shepard had seen the look on her face and would try to make her feel better. Standing up from the edge of her bed, Abra crossed her small bedroom and opened the door for her visitor. Sure enough, Shepard stood on the other side of the door. You can come in, said Abra, leaving the doorway and returning to her bed. She lay her new sweater on her lap and rubbed its soft fabric between her fingers. Pulling the desk chair away from the desk, Shepard sat down in front of her and let out a small sigh. Are all the girls really wearing this in Solu? She asked. The pretty ones, said Shepard, relieved that Abra had started the conversation for him. Do you like it? Yeah. Abra held it up and smiled at it again. Did you have a good birthday, Abracadabra? Shepard's question came out hesitant and slow. Yeah. Setting down her present, Abra gave her attention to her friend. She pulled her knees up to her chest and hugged her arms around her legs. You and Stellan always celebrate my birthday, even though I'm not a kid anymore. Why should celebrating birthdays end when you're no longer a kid? Asked Shepard lightly. We didn't celebrate yours, said Abra, giving him a pointed stare. I didn't want to, Shepard shrugged. The answer felt like a cop-out, and Abra wanted to force him to say what he really meant. But she also didn't want to get into an argument with her closest friend on her birthday. Instead, she rested her chin on her knees and stared at the painting that hung on the wall near her bed. Are you happy? For a moment, Abra didn't answer. She didn't move her eyes away from the painting, her eyes tracing paint strokes and splashes of color. When she heard Shepard lean forward in his seat, Abra turned to him and saw the grief. She cursed it silently, wishing he would leave her friend and family alone. She did her best to smile. Yes, I'm happy, she said. You don't have to say that just for my sake, Abra. Shepard shook his head as he stared at her seriously. I don't want you to lie to me about how you feel. Abra didn't answer again. 1,000 words and moments flitted through her mind. An overwhelming majority of them were happy. As much as she wished she had the stars in her childhood memories, she had been loved well and coddled almost too much in her existence on Earth. But then there were the few moments that didn't quite fit in. It's not that I'm sad, said Abra quietly, but sometimes I'm not happy. What makes you not happy? A furrow creased Shepard's brow, and Abra remembered a time when the furrow only came out during heated games of Scrabble and Trivial Pursuit. I'm 23 and I feel... Abra felt her own brow furrow as she thought hard. I feel stuck? Shepard nodded, urging her to continue. I feel like my life has barely changed since I was 17 and we finally got my sickness under control. It's been years now and nothing has happened and I haven't lost any more memories. Surely I'm old enough for something to be different now. Abra didn't like that she was complaining to one of the people who loved her most in life. Stellan doesn't tell me anything more about my sickness, and neither does your brother. I still can't go to Solu. I don't even give myself my own doses, for Pete's sake. It's always Stellan. You've done it for yourself before, interjected Shepard. Only when Stellan has to be gone over the time I need to take it. Abra gave Shepard a look. You know he's just worried about something going wrong. Shepard looked away, his voice small. I know. Again, Abra felt the sting of guilt. I know I shouldn't complain. You just asked how I felt. Shepard sat back and rubbed his hands through his hair. His eyes landed on the same painting Abra had been staring at earlier. Something halfway between the grief and another emotion that Abra couldn't quite understand showed up on his face, and she followed his gaze. The painting had been hanging on her wall for the past 3 years exactly. She only knew that because on the back corner it said, Happy 20th birthday, Abra. Love, Stellan. On the front it showed 2 versions of the night sky. The top third showed the constellation of Phoenix, and the bottom third showed Sagittarius. In the middle, the ringed image of Saturn and her moons connected the two. When Abra had asked him where he found it, he said he had had it painted for her. When she asked him why he had chosen those constellations, he said they were her favorites. Then he had left the room, and Abra never asked him about it again. She had hung it up, hoping that it would help her remember the names of the stars better, but it hadn't changed anything. Every morning when she looked at it, it felt as if she saw it for the first time. Hey, Abra pushed against Shepherd's knee with her foot. I wish I knew what to do to make you happy, he said, his voice thick and low. You do enough. Abra's heart sank at her friend's words. Not enough. Shepherd didn't look at her as he sighed heavily. Hey, Abra frowned. Yes, you do. Wiping his eyes, Shepherd tried to hide his tears. Unsure of what and how and why her friend suffered from the grief, Abra did the only thing she knew to do and stood up to wrap her arms around his neck. Holding her with one arm and covering his face with the other, Shepherd struggled to compose himself. When he let her go, he ducked his head, embarrassed. Stop crying over me, you'll ruin my birthday, said Abra, hoping her words would make him laugh. They didn't, but he did try to smile. Honestly, if I have to feel stuck, I should be grateful that I'm stuck in a place where I have so many good things. Nowhere is perfect, said Shepherd, and Abra didn't know exactly who he said it for. Just keep your fingers crossed that Stellan will say yes to taking me to Solu. Abra grinned at her friend as she sat back on the edge of her bed. One trip to the big city will change everything. I know it will. Maybe. Shepherd gave a lopsided grin and wiped his eyes one last time. How about this? How about I tell you a secret? A secret? A thrill ran down Abra's spine at the offer. You have to promise not to tell Stellan you know. Shepherd narrowed his eyes at the girl and gave her a hard look. I promise. Abra agreed quickly. The reason why I've been going to Solu so often is... Happiness danced in Shepherd's eyes again as he started talking. With an irrepressible smile and pink cheeks, the young man cleared his throat and struggled to keep his emotions in check. What? Just tell me! Abra clasped her hands together and held her breath. I met a girl, said Shepherd, looking up at her shyly and with a smile. Clapping her hands over her mouth, Abra felt her heart leap for joy at the news. Seeing the joy on her friend's face made Abra want to cheer out loud, but she kept her excitement inside. Instead, she grinned at him and whispered softly, Congratulations, Hocus Pocus. The use of his childhood nickname that went hand in hand with her own made Shepherd laugh out loud. Standing up, he pulled Abra into a hug and swayed with her in his arms for a long moment. Abra hoped they would stay like that forever. Happy, together, safe. Later that night, Abra ran the secret through the pathways of her brain so much she almost wore it out. She wondered why Stellan hadn't wanted her to know. To keep her from asking about Solu? To keep her from meeting a stranger? Both of those possibilities frustrated her and made her world feel too small to even breathe in. She longed for more than what Utoko could offer her. Another possibility came to mind, and Abra thought it over until she drifted off to sleep. Did he want to keep her from wanting a relationship of her own? The thought had never really came to her. Of course, she saw the villagers around her marry and fall in love and knew that type of relationship existed. In stories and movies and on television, Abra had seen it all. Yet she felt nothing when it came to herself. I just want to remember the stars, she thought to herself as her eyes closed. I want to visit Solu and remember the stars.